So about 3 weeks ago I replaced my Canon 5D Mark IV camera with this Fuji X-T3. Over the last 3 weeks I've spent a lot of time purely testing the camera, not going out to fantastic locations or looking for really good images, but I've really just been out doing a lot of testing of the camera and the lenses that I've bought for it, and I'll cover more of that as the video goes on. But I'm making this video just to talk about my reasons for changing to this camera. It's not a video to say I've bought a new camera, look at my new camera. It's just to cover my reasons why. I thought some of my subscribers will notice I've changed camera and they'll naturally be curious as to why. So I want to talk about my reasons in this video. At the end of the day, a camera is just a tool. I think it's very important to buy a camera which covers your specific requirements and needs, and also one that you enjoy using. Other than that, it really is just a tool, but I think we all enjoy using our cameras as well. So I bought my Canon 5D Mark IV over 3 years ago now, and I've been using it during that period extensively, and I've been really happy with it. When I originally bought it, my requirements were that it needed to cover my outdoor photography, which was landscapes and wildlife photography, and it also needed to be suitable for wedding photography and portrait photography. So I bought the Canon 5D Mark IV. Had I been doing only one of those types of photography, I may well have chosen a different camera, but for doing all of those, it really seemed like the perfect camera. I also partnered it with some Canon f2.8L lenses, constant aperture, and that was really useful as well for my needs. So it's a fantastic camera system and it's worked really well. But approximately 2.5 years ago, I decided to concentrate 100% on landscape photography and a bit of wildlife photography as well. Those were my main passions, my outdoor photography. Then as time went on, I began to become ever more aware of the weight of all this gear on my back as I went out doing long hikes and so on. And I really started to look at, initially, not changing camera systems, but just looking at could I reduce the weight of what I had. So I made some subtle changes here and there, saved a few grams. A significant one was buying the Canon 70-200 f4L lens to take out with me when I was doing landscapes. It's quite a few grams lighter than the f2.8L lens of the equivalent focal length range. But I still felt I could do more, and really to save more weight I would have to change camera systems to something a bit smaller and lighter. But it wasn't just weight that prompted me to change. Of course, mirrorless technology came out and it's becoming more and more apparent these days that that is the future. Maybe not in everyone's opinion, but I think generally that's the way the market is going. And I really thought I could utilize some of the benefits. I liked the idea of the electronic viewfinder, seeing my histogram, seeing the exposure change and so on. I found that would be really useful to me, I thought. Other things that I really thought I could benefit from changing to a different camera was having a screen in the back which I could tilt. Now the screen in the back of my 5D Mark IV was excellent, but I couldn't tilt it in any way to help me compose my shots. Where possible, I always like to compose my images through a viewfinder, but sometimes if you've got the camera really low or high or just at certain angles, that's not always easy or possible. So having a screen which could tilt I thought would be of benefit to me. It's been very important to get the camera height correct. Now that it's on the tripod and I've found the position, it's not an issue, but before that I've been hand holding, crouching up and down for long periods of time, looking through the viewfinder, which I like to do to compose my image, and that takes its toll, you could say, on your legs and back. So if I had a camera with a flip out screen in the back, I could have used live view to make it a little bit easier, but unfortunately I don't have that. And that's sort of the main reasons that I wanted to change. Now, there's lots of fantastic cameras out there. I don't really know if you get a bad camera these days. And when the Fuji X-T3 came out, I instantly liked its looks, but looks are not important if it doesn't do the job well. But more than just looks, I liked the layout of the controls, and I spent a lot of time looking at the camera, the menu system, and I just liked the way everything was set up. And I was sure it was an excellent camera, but the real concerns I had and what stopped me changing immediately and why it's taken me so long is just over image quality. And I'll talk about how I find this image quality further into the video, but my main concerns were how would my prints look with images taken in this camera compared to a Canon 5D Mark IV. Now typically I print at a maximum size of A2 or slightly smaller, generally speaking, and by doing a lot of research and some testing and so on myself, I became convinced that if I print at those sizes, the image quality on my final print will be as good with this camera as it would be with the Canon 5D Mark IV. Of course, if I'm printing much larger, then a full frame sensor, perhaps with more megapixels, will show an improvement in quality. But for my needs, I don't think I was going to benefit in the final print using the Canon over this Fuji X-T3. The other thing that slightly concerned me and delayed my move to another camera system was the processing issues, or the often talked about processing issues with Fuji files in Lightroom. There was all this talk of the worm effect, and I was just concerned about that. I didn't really have time to learn a different type of software, and I had no desire to switch to another type of processing software for my images. So that's the main reasons which held me off for so long. So why have I now got the camera? Well, one thing is the processing software. I've been doing a lot of research, and apparently the issues are now gone or not nearly as apparent with Lightroom and processing Fuji files. So that instantly got me quite excited. And the other reason is that the main lens I used on my Canon was the 24-70, and it developed some problems, and it's been off getting fixed, and it's been taking a really long time to get fixed. So I thought, why not use that downtime to try out this camera and see what I think of it. It's an excellent opportunity, and if it doesn't work out for me, I'll stick with my Canon. I had no problem with the Canon camera. The camera and lenses are fantastic, apart from that issue that developed with my 24-70. So that's the reasons I've now arrived with a Fuji X-T3. So I'll talk a little bit about what I've bought at the moment and why I've bought it. So I've got the X-T3 camera itself, and I've bought two lenses. The lenses I've bought cover my most used focal length range. So that, in Canon terms, full frame terms, was my 24-70mm and my 70-200. So on the camera at the moment is the XF16-55. It's the constant f2.8 aperture model. And I've also bought the XF50-140, again the constant f2.8 aperture model. Now I could have bought two lenses to cover this focal length range almost, lighter Fuji lenses, but I've bought these heavier ones for a number of reasons. One is that they're weather resistant. Not everyone may find that important, but I do. It just gives me some extra reassurance, and I have had a lens have issues in the past which wasn't weather resistant. So some people may not have had problems, but I prefer to have lenses which are weather resistant if at all possible. The other reason that I bought this lens specifically that's on the camera at the moment is because it begins at 16mm. The similar lighter Fuji lens begins at 18mm. Now 16 on this X-T3 is the same as 24 on my full frame Canon, and I shot at 24mm a lot, so I definitely wanted this lens here to start at the 16mm rather than have one which started at 18mm. The next reason is the f2.8 constant aperture. I won't use that every time I'm out doing landscape photography, but I did use that in my Canons, and although obviously this won't be exactly the same as f2.8 in my Canon, I do enjoy using shallow depth of field, being creative, and also for my own personal fun photography, taking images of animals, pets, friends and family and so on. The f2.8 aperture will be handy for that as well. And the final reason is that, of course, the other two Fuji lenses are apparently really good quality. I've no doubts over that, and I'm pretty sure at certain focal lengths and at certain apertures the image quality may well be very similar to the two heavier lenses that I've bought. But overall, in terms of edge-to-edge sharpness and at different apertures and at different focal lengths, I'm quite sure that these two lenses will perform slightly better in terms of image quality, and that is important to me. I always think it's important to have some nice lenses if you can manage to do so, and when I'm producing prints, it really is important to me that the final printed result is of as best quality as I can manage. So I really think this camera partnered with these lenses is producing excellent prints, which I'm really happy with, and are not really any different to what my Canon 5D Mark IV can for the sizes that I'm printing at. So that's what I've bought at the moment, and over the last 3 weeks I've been testing the camera and the lenses extensively in terms of their quality, and also just to let me get used to the camera as well. It's obviously quite a thing changing brands into a different camera, so you need time to get familiar with it. In terms of viewing my images at 100% in Lightroom, they look fantastic to me in terms of their quality. I've got no issues at all, not seeing the worm effect. If I heavily sharpen something, yes, you may start to see it, but that's not something I do anyway, and there's some new features that's been added to Lightroom to help alleviate that. But the images look great just when I open them up as RAW files, and then you can improve them even further with some techniques and various processing. I may change my processing technique a little bit with the X-T3 versus what I did with the Canon, but the image quality is fantastic, and for my needs, printing at A2 typically and smaller, I'm absolutely delighted and have no concerns about switching over to the X-T3 whatsoever. Had I been printing much bigger, then that would have been an issue. I've saved quite a bit of weight. I could have saved more, but my priority was to get these two lenses, as I've talked about, and I've explained my reasons for doing that. But my main used lens was the 24-70 on the Canon. So on this Fuji it's going to be the 16-55, and I'm not going to go through and describe to every gram how much weight I've saved and different options and how much I save or don't save if I'm carrying different lenses, but just to give one little example, I think very roughly, not to the exact gram, but this camera with the battery in it and so on, I think is almost 350 grams lighter than my Canon. Then this lens is approximately 140 grams roughly lighter than my equivalent 24-70 on the Canon. So if I know where I'm going and I know this is the only lens I'm going to need, I'm walking about roughly with something that is close to 500 grams lighter. And sitting here, having held this for quite a while now to make this video, you really notice the weight difference. So I'm really pleased. The screen which tilts is very useful as well, and there's just little features which I like. It's not important for my landscape photography, but I like the eye detection. I like having more focusing points, and just various usability features. I like the dials and so on, and I'm really enjoying using the camera as well. It is just a tool, but it really does excite me to use it and encourages me to take photographs, so that's fantastic as well. Two minor niggles, and there may be ways round this. I've not had the system long yet, obviously, to know that. One is when I switch the camera to a 2 or I think the 10-second timer as well. If you switch the camera off and then later you put it back on, it doesn't remember that you are using the 2-second timer. Now that's a very minor inconvenience, and it takes literally 1 second to turn it back on again, but I wish it would remember your last setting. The other thing is, and I'm not sure if I've got the numbers correct here, but just off the top of my head, on the rear LCD screen on the Canon, if you zoomed in to the maximum level before you took your image to check your focusing or use manual focus, I think the zoom level was something like maybe 10 times zoom, and it was really easy to fine-tune your manual focus and see if you're in focus. On the Fuji, you can zoom in and then you can turn the rear control dial and zoom in further. But I'm guessing off the top of my head it looks something like a 6 times zoom as opposed to what I think was maybe a 10 in the Canon. So it's not as easy just to see in fine detail or on trees miles off in the distance if they are in focus. It's not a huge issue, it's not caused me to miss focus or anything, but it's just a minor thing, and that's the only two things I can say that I've noticed that are things I would like improved. But other than that, I'm really enjoying the camera. Now, I'm going to finish the video here. That's why I've changed. I don't want to make a big deal out of it or anything, but just want to explain my reasons why. And as I said, I'm spending the last 3 weeks mainly in woodland and just walking along countryside, purely testing. So I've been taking images of just anything, just various things in my head I wanted to test regarding apertures and sharpness and focal length ranges and how it performs and so on. But as I've been walking around, I have came across a couple of things which instantly my brain was thinking, that's a really nice photograph. So I took those for the purposes of getting them because they're nice shots rather than testing the camera. But one of those shots in particular was a good test of the dynamic range of the camera. So I'm going to end this video by popping up the images that I've taken, and hopefully you will like them, and hopefully you will agree with me, and that's kind of the whole point of this video, or what I'm trying to put across in the video, is that there is no difference between that images that I'm going to show you, or whether I took them on my Canon or used a Sony or a Nikon. I think the thing I'd like to leave you with in this video is that the most important thing is the person operating the camera rather than the camera itself, as long as it meets your requirements and has got the specifications you need for your specific job or your hobby or whatever it is in terms of your photography. So that's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it and found it interesting, and I'll hopefully see you in my next one.